well. Okay,
Alrighty. So stage is all
so
yours.
yeah, yeah, if everyone's ready to start, then let's do this. So I'm Tam. I graduated from George Brown College in the game programming program T163. I graduated last year. I currently work at Ubisoft Toronto as a gameplay programmer, and I'm the president of Hidden IO, which is our indie studio, me and Saul's indie studio. Um, that's about it for me in terms of professional information. Saul, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Saul. I uh went to the Humber game programming course. Prior to that, I spent since I was like, I don't know, 12 or something, I was doing graphics design, various random forums, and going through that Humber, I ended up at like Level Up, and then I kind of, messed around for quite a few years making lots of prototypes, and then had a number of jobs in the industry with for location-based AR or just AR applications or even like physiotherapy games. And now I'm at Unity, um, and simultaneously working on our VR project for our studio, basically our headlining project. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
great to hear, guys. So just to let everyone know, just save your questions for the end. We will have a little Q&A section, so just feel free, unless, like, yeah, just save them for the end, and then we'll have a good chat there. So I
All
guess
right.
I'll start off with the first question then, if that's all right. Just like, um, what is your guys' current game or your current project that you're working on right now? What's it about?
Okay, so at work, I am working on an unannounced project, so I can't really say much about it. But I'm working on the 3Cs team, which is character controls and camera. Um, which is basically like just working on general gameplay of the character and shit like that. I mean, it's pretty broad. Like the things I do are very broad. But the game we work on together is called Zix. It's a VR multiplayer co-op roguelike, and it works on the Quest. It works on Steam, and we have asymmetric multiplayer with PC players. So PC people on the PC with the keyboard and mouse can join and play as basically a spectator. So we started working together by working on game jams. We worked quite well together. So like we were pretty good at motivating each other, coming up with ideas, implementing features and other technical and design challenges. And then we started Zix because we saw that the market had a hole in it for something that was fun to play with friends, basically a co-op game. That like a roguelike co-op. The market was pretty underwhelming to say the least. So we started making this game. We just had some fun with it. We love Risk of Rain, Enter the Gungeon, Binding of Isaac. They're all great roguelike games, super fun, and we wanted to bring ideas from that game and innovate on it to be something great in VR. So we crafted our own original flavor of those games combined. Um, so then we basically spent all of our free time for the year we spent before we started looking for funding, working on this game, and then finally we started looking for publishers and having meetings with platform funding like Meta and Pico, PlayStation, stuff like that. So after a year, we met up with someone that was from Meta. Um, he was captivated by our game, our vision, our design. Around October, we were pitching to him and working on our pitch deck and just trying to get through their green lighting process. And around April this year, we actually got the green light for funding through Meta. And now we work with a small team. We have a game designer, we have an art director, we have a 3D modeler, we have us, of course. And yeah, while we work full time at our jobs, we're working with our partial funding from Meta with our team to make a better looking game, a better playing game, so we can gather more funding for our project. um, so it felt pretty good getting some recognition for our work. Uh, I
It was
hope,
a long time coming. Also,
yeah.
it's not like we got out of school like and then just did this. It is possible to do it. Um, I think I think honestly, if I had some of the ideas and even just like the confidence that I did from that I do now, I would have been able to basically secure some funding early. But just from that, what kind of inspired me to even try to do that is I think throughout development we always like during this pass we always knew just all we need to do is just make 15 minutes of like polished, solid gameplay. And instead of thinking about the entirety of the game, we were just focusing on how can we get that 50 minutes playing and feeling as good as possible and focusing on that. And that 1 year was like, we did take quite a bit of our weekends to do that, to sort of put it together. But if and honestly, it didn't necessarily, it's not like, yeah, it's not a whole lot of time. It's maybe like a few months of development or something altogether. And that's really all it took. It took a little bit of like a vision that you had, keep in the back of your mind where kind of you want to go because you do want to inspire people with like where you want it to end up. But and that's part of your pitch deck is like when you pitch, you're showing them like a 50-minute demo, and especially it's really important that if you have um no background, like especially as students, like you don't have anything to show it in the industry or whatever, that means so much more falls on you showing the game versus talking about it. A company that already has a bunch of stuff, they go to Meta, they have no game made out. They have is a pitch deck with like, 10, 20 slides, and they can secure like 2, $3 million from Meta and just go on. We could barely secure, like half a mil for what and that seems like a lot, but like once you start getting into paying everyone, that's not a whole lot. You barely have enough runway for 1 year of development with the kinds of people you need, and these publishers and they expect a lot out of you. They're not going to let you take 600 grand and sit there alone with just you and somebody else and just kind of pump out the bare minimum product. They're going to force you to basically hire people that cost a lot of money, people that cost like hundreds of $1,000s a year for you to basically make this production the kind of level of quality they're trying to pay for. Um, it's just it's really important to remember that if you do want to get into this kind of line of thinking, you definitely want to think of how can I sell this thing from the little demo? Because if we didn't have that demo, we wouldn't have been able to sell this to Meta, like for sure. Even if we had like a really nice pitch deck and a cool idea, what captivated the Meta person was actually our interaction systems and the way that we and I do have like a decade of UX design that I kind of put into this from various places. So that was like lots of game jams, lots of little prototypes, bunch of stuff. Like I worked from being in college. Uh, I worked like on projects for 6, 7 years, something like that. Never saw the light of day. I barely showed it to anybody. It's still kind of like a secret of mine, but it's one of those things where, people say don't start your game dev journey working on your dream project. I kind of agree and I kind of don't. I think the most important thing is do something that actually makes you want to wake up and like work on it every morning. If that's your dream project, do your dream project because even if it doesn't like turn into anything, that's okay. It still gives you so much experience while trying to make it, and it gives you something to show at the end of the day. I mean, even if it's not done. But yeah, I think that journey it did take a long time. Yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is a bit of a balance of pragmatism and ambition. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think it's just a lot of people have different journeys, so you'll get there in the end. You just got to make sure that you're basically, following what you really want to do. And also don't close yourself off. It's the best thing we did for ourselves, I think, is we work together. Just having one other person to bounce your ideas off of is really And yeah, like catching each other's lows, because you'll be pumping for a couple of weeks and you're like super excited, but then you get to the point of like some bug or some design issue or something, and then if you're alone, you're just kind of sitting there thinking about that thing yourself. Maybe you're thinking about it so long you get tired of it, and then you pick up some other project, which is, once again, it's okay. I have a wide a bit of experience because I jumped on so many projects. Um, but it is also kind of good to, like, finish stuff, even if it's small stuff. I do agree with that bit of line of thinking. If you can finish a bunch of small stuff, even if it's game jams, that really gives you a lot of experience as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think if you're first starting out, try not to spend 10 years on one project. I think it's not that it's a waste of time or that the effort's unneeded or useless. It's more that if you can keep trying to make solid prototypes within a span of say 8 to 10 months, and you can try to take it somewhere and show people and get your friends to play it or get your family to play it, then at least you have some semblance of an idea of where this is going, right? And like our project is a culmination of everything we've learned throughout our entire lives, really, because like when I was a kid, I was programming too, and I was making small multiplayer mods and stuff like that. And that those game design ideas of making a multiplayer game, it came into this project too. So I think that you take your life experiences, you take your work experiences, you make something you truly love. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, obviously. But just keep working on something because it's not like you're only gonna love making one game for the rest of your life. And I hope you won't. I think making a couple of ideas and working on it and writing these down is important. Like make a document with 100 ideas and don't limit yourself. Make your project, and if it's not working out in 8 to 10 months, like that's a fairly good time range for a good solid prototype to start showing around and selling it essentially.
Okay, that's so cool. Yeah. So, uh, there's a lot of information to kind of go down there. But one of the things I did want to ask was, would it be better for people starting out, let's say like a year one, they just got into programming or art or wherever they are, and they're like, I want to do a game jam. Would it be better to start as a solo to like get a game out there, or like a prototype, not even finish the jam, just like get something done there? Or would it be a lot better to grab a group of people or find a group of people and kind of bounce ideas off of them? Because from what it sounds like, having at least one other person is really beneficial to both like making the fundamentals of that game you want to make and learning as well.
Yeah, I think that having a lot of people of different disciplines is important because you probably want to get someone with art or something, but it's not necessary, especially for something like a game jam. If you just want to test yourself and challenge yourself alone, then do it. Make a game jam alone. I think if you're first starting out, working in a team, I don't know if it's really viable because it really depends on your skill level at that point. If you spent 6 months working your hardest to learn Unity and you've made your own personal prototypes, then yeah, you could probably start working in a team and becoming like a wealthy asset essentially. Um, but
Yeah.
I think like first year, I don't know. I
So
would
like
say do it if you want to anyway.
I don't think there's a huge that I mean, like a lot of game development and stuff, there isn't like the guidelines are it's like whatever works for you. It's kind of the same rule of like, finding the fun in actually making the game. There's also finding the fun in the process of making the game. So whatever you find most fun is what you should be doing when it comes to the process of making the game, because that is fundamentally what's going to allow you to find what you're best at. And that might be that, like, you might be at a point where you're programming and you're like, I kind of don't dig this, or just it doesn't feel like it really clicks with me, and like some things. So, and maybe you're in a more team environment, you might find that little niche that you're in, because game development has a million different roles. If you just want to be in the process of making like that art piece or whatever, maybe you end up in film or something. I think being in a group helps you sort of figure out, you know, maybe what you're good at is more of the production side of things. Maybe you're better at basically, coming up with or helping manage the production of it. Or maybe you're better at the architecture, but you can't really like write it down. You can't like code it. There might be some specific niche that you're into, because I think the issue with a lot of game development programs is that they seem to push you into a specific line of thinking, but there is just like so many different jobs. Even if like here's one thing that I'm actually struggling with right now. We are, finding someone that is a senior level at level design. There are not many level designers out there that are like in the field that are even like available. It's like it's actually one of the hardest things to find, and a lot of game development courses don't teach about it. So I think just following what you find fun is probably going to be the easiest way to lead you into making decisions like that. Like, should I be making a game alone? If you find programming in like a dark room, alone, and just like producing some sort of game idea from scratch in like 24 hours, fully focusing, if that's your thing, do that. If you find just like fucking around with your friends in a group environment is more of like what you're into, and just like working on it collaboratively in a game, do that. Just, some people, you will also like, one of the most useful skills obviously is learning alongside other people, right? And working with other people. That's just a really big skill, and it's not a it's potentially difficult because there's so many different kinds of people and they all work differently. Um, it's good to cultivate that skill, because once you start going in an industry and applying, they're gonna be checking your people skills. They're gonna see if you're a good culture fit. Are you like a good vibe fit? Have you ever worked with other people? Is something that they'll ask you, and they'll ask you like, have you ever had conflicts with other people? And it's like, how did you resolve those conflicts? Like, that kind of experience you can't get from sitting in a room alone making games. So I think you do need a healthy mix of both, of solo time and group time. As a first year student, definitely try to follow the fun, cultivate the skills where they make sense to be cultivated. Like, do a little bit of level design in like Baba Is You or something if you want to become a puzzle designer, or make some Quake levels or something, or just do art if that's what you feel like doing. Yeah, find your passion, and then see if you can find someone who needs your passion, or who's missing that in their project.
That's really
Yeah,
okay. So cool. Thank you for the answer there. Yeah. So kind of now that we're on the topic of teams and that kind of stuff as well, another question I wanted to ask was about the industry. What does, and I think you guys answered some of this, but like I'd like just more of a precise answer. Like, what is the difference between a game developer that works at a company, like an actual company with contracts and that kind of stuff, versus an indie game developer who might be on their own or with a group of friends, that kind of stuff?
Um, well, it really depends where you work in terms of the tools you use, if we're being really explicit about that. But in terms of how you work, I think if you work at a bigger corporation, everything's very organized and everything's written down, and you're working on something someone assigns you, is very sort of robotic almost, and it's disciplined for sure, and there's a good thing to say about that kind of organization. When you're working as an indie, you kind of go like off the record. Like you're just winging it for a lot of it. But it really depends. Like if you're the indie studio that wants to stay organized, have everything perfectly on Trello and work together, completing tasks, it's totally viable and it's probably fairly smart. But it's not going to be, I don't know, sustainable for everyone. I would say that's the main difference I find from working in AAA versus working at my own indie. I've worked at studios that are indie and they're not AAA, and they're kind of in the middle. They have tasks, they have Trello, they are organized, they have game design documents, but they're not at the level of like submit like a code review. Code review has to be approved by three people. Those three people, they write comments or something, and then finally, after all that approval process, you run it through a build machine this is a very like step by step process to ensure nothing fails because at AAA you're dealing with millions of commits, and which is I don't know how to describe a commit to non-programmers here, but
It's like you're submitting
basically
a like text file basically. Like,
yeah, it's like submitting a revision to what you did before. So like if you made a model and you added an arm to a spider or something, then now you submitted this nine-legged spider, I guess, and that's your second revision. So now imagine in AAA you have millions of revisions, so you have to go through these build machines and step-by-step processes with reviews to get past it. But when you work indie, it's just like submit your code and hopefully it works and someone will test it, I hope. you know so it's definitely different in terms of processes, professionalism, but at the end of the day the job still gets done. I think in AAA things take much longer because of that, but you end up with higher polish at the end because you have an entire QA team, you have an entire tools team, entire UI team, engine team. These are all people that you can rely on to do different parts of a game, or work on different parts of an engine, or even just to test something when you submit it. So I would say
I'll
those are
just
the main differences, but Saul can
yeah,
continue.
I'll weigh in because there's one thing that has definitely dawned on me from having been a student, and my general feelings towards the industry, like bigger companies versus smaller companies. I think a really good point is if you find that you're the type of person that doesn't want to spend too much time thinking about what you're supposed to do and just want to get in there and just kind of like accomplish your task, like you just want to just like solve the puzzle and like kind of zone out and let somebody else kind of guide your hand. um Definitely kind of aim for the bigger studios because you're going to learn a fuck ton. First of all, like they're going to teach you some of the most useful skills you'll know, and you'll become so fast at whatever you're doing. And this applies at like to all kinds of things like art, programmer, whatever. Like those studios are built to be efficient. They're built to be fast. So in turn, they will make you into a very efficient person. Your learning doesn't end at the end of college. Your learning, if anything, begins once you get out of there and you start getting a job. And you should be really happy for that kind of learning because this is years and years of people trying to like beating their head against the wall so that you have an easier time doing your work. And you become more efficient and just more skilled. You'll be happier by the end of it. But if you're the type of person who like really likes um kind of having that risk reward sensation of like almost like running your company, or you really like being self-directed, you have strong opinions, um going to indie studios will be very useful to you as well because there's not a lot there. Your voice is a lot louder because of that. And you can influence the direction of that company, which is also really fucking stressful. Like, right? Like, because you could be a part of the reason that something fails. You take on the brunt of that pain. Whereas with a larger company, someone tells you to do something, you do it, and that doesn't work out well for making that game or whatever. That's not your fault. You were just following the instructions, right? But if you're an indie studio, it will be your fault. That is something that at a certain point, like a good company culture will understand. It's like you were doing your best. They're not going to like weigh in on you. But realistically, the more leadership you have, the more um responsibility. So it's something to keep in mind. And I think you can learn a lot of skills from indies obviously too, because especially if you're aiming for your true goal is like, I just want to make my own company, I want to like make my own games, I want to do all this. Seeing an indie studio and working at one, you might scare yourself away from that idea because it's fucking like every boss you notice in indie game studios, they're like they have no time, and they're really tired. They're kind of burnt out constantly. Like even the meta producer I talked to, he's also running an indie studio on the side, kind of like we are, and he's like he's just constantly getting like migraines. He feels kind of like delirious at times. Like it's an extreme road to go. It's like it's like pushing out an indie baby over 2 years. It's like this some weird sensation like that.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
analogy.
You're really never gonna stop thinking about it. Like you'll be at like us working our full-time jobs, we're thinking about our indie studio constantly. We're thinking about what's next, when's our next meeting, you know. There's a lot to do when you're running an indie, and I think I will say that when you are in an indie setting, you wear multiple hats. Like not only if you're just at like a Unity company and now you're doing UI and gameplay and you're doing AI, you know, stuff like that, but you're also like maybe having a hand in like game design, especially if it's your own studio. Likely you'll be talking about game design and animation and modeling and art and everything. It depends like how big your indie studio is, I guess, but usually, when you start out, you don't have some experienced art director that can handle all of the art stuff. And at the end of the day, you're probably still going to have a say, and you're still going to be meeting with them. You're still going to have to know everything and every inch of your project. So,
Yeah, that's really important, I think, because I was last year when I was in the game programming course. That's a very important thing that was very like said to me. Like, you're an indie developer, you're going to wear all the hats, like as many hats as they need, basically, which I think is really important. So, would you guys say uh, that if you let's say you come right out of like you finish your final year of whatever school you're going to, and you want to go be a game developer? I know this is like a very broad question to be honest, because like you can go to indie, you can go to a corporation, but would it be like better for someone to go to a corporation to start off to get that knowledge? Would it be viable?
I think if you can actually get in, then go ahead. It really depends on your personal preference. I think when I first started out, I didn't want to work for a corporation. I didn't want to work in AAA because I didn't want to be a cog in the machine. But there's some, you know, some like happiness in the stability, really. Just like I don't really have to once I'm done work, I don't really have to think about work, you know. Whereas when I was working in indie, then I always have to think about what I have to do the next day and what tasks I did during the day, you know. Sometimes I'd stay later to finish things up, but I think I might have gone off topic here a bit.
Oh no,
But
that is I forgot to finish my point. That was the part that I was trying to figure like lead to is that even though I was super afraid of being a cog because I thought it was lame, now that I have been a cog, it is comforting. It's not as lame as you would think because that extra time that you have to spend thinking about what you need to do the next day, that literally takes off time that you would be taking for yourself for freedom. Like I'll constantly am working on my own projects on the side of every company that I've worked on, and the more seniority or like more control that they give me, the less time I have, like emotional energy I have to work on my own stuff. So keep that in mind with those studios. And I think to answer your question, I do think it is valuable to work in a corporation because of what I said. Like you can learn a lot of those skills. You can become very efficient very quickly. It's like a fast track to becoming very skilled at what you do. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to get in there. And I would say that, get whatever job you can get that just fits you immediately. Like just try to get into. I think an indie studio is much easier to get into because they're looking for interns, and a lot of people have. Um, there's a lot of programs to basically subsidize the cost of students, like straight out of college. So it basically makes you become a very cheap commodity, and through that you will still learn plenty. And as soon as you get that one studio on your profile, whatever it may be, um, 1 gig, you're already so much farther ahead. Like you can finally like put it down. And I will say that if you even if you don't, um, like I'm working as a senior at Unity. It's not like I've worked at a lot of studios or anything, but what I do have is my portfolio is like stacked. Even if it's stacked with stuff that's incomplete, it's still like it looks impressive, and people were like, "Wow, I could use that." So there's some semblance of like if you just don't feel ready to do that by the end, that's okay. Like you graduate and you're like, I'm fucking tired. I need some time to myself. I need to like rethink this. I also did this. I spent years just kind of dicking around and like traveling, or like going in a car and just traveling across Canada, or dicking around in a house and like doing a bare minimum job somewhere and working on my own projects. That's also okay. Do it at your own pace. Don't feel like you need to compete with everybody to get to that industry. In my opinion, I think if you do things at your own pace and listen to your own instincts, you'll fall into the role you're supposed to fall into, and you'll be happier. Because if you do try to rush it, and just try to get there, like because you want the money, you want the stability, and whatever, that's fine for some people. For me, as someone who's just like, I really think about how I feel, and like if I'm ready for stuff. Sometimes it can, you can fall into some stuff that you don't really want to be in, and it can be a little bit like, almost like claustrophobic. You don't feel like you've had the right time to grow. Because also, like, game ideas, they don't just come out of nowhere. Like the good ones, they come from like just like doing stuff in life, like just going around, going ziplining or some shit, like just some sort of activity or some sort of like flow in your life. Like one of my friends just went like into the forest for quite a while and was just like taking care of like turtles as part of some program, and as a result of that, he got influenced quite a lot by to make art in regards to like nature and stuff, and that's like opened a lot of doors for him. This is also like a valid path.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that kind of led into my next question as well, because I was gonna talk about and ask you guys some tips, tricks, anything to deal with burnout, especially, and keeping motivation while working on a project. Because I know that, especially when you're working on an indie development project, it's really hard to keep that motivation for like 8 months straight. I know for me personally, like it's very difficult to keep on those projects, and I need another person to kind of help me. So if you guys have any, since you guys came from, you know, corporations and indie developers, is there any tips you could give or how you guys dealt with it? I guess you kind of answered some of it as well.
Biggest tip is definitely just like we said, get yourself a partner. But if that's not a thing, I think the second biggest tip is and this really works really well with like finding the fun in your game as fast as possible. Make something fun. Try to play test it weekly with someone. It could be just some randoms online, whatever. Just be playtesting, because that gives you so much inspiration. You show it to someone and they're like, "Holy shit, this is awesome." Or they might complain about some shit and you're like, "Okay, well I have work to do. Let me try to like tweak this and stuff." They might tell you your game sucks. Sorry, like I don't think it's redeemable, and like maybe you should stop. If you get enough of those in a playtest, maybe it's time to like, let's go back to the drawing board. Just remember, you're really um every person that comes into this, I've noticed, like, you're all creative. Like you're gonna come up with another idea. Don't think that you're at a loss for them. And especially right now with like AI shit, like you could just ask AI to help you, delve into those ideas and try to improve your game design if you want. But realistically, your community is gonna be your biggest help. Start building a community as quick as possible. If you watch a lot of those game development logs on YouTube, you could start just working on some little project and doing a little game development log. It doesn't have to even be a YouTube video. It could just be that you're just writing a little blog post or something. But as soon as you can get your community engagement in and you get play testing in so that people start playing with you, you're watching them play, streaming it on Discord, you're watching them go through your levels, it's going to influence you a huge amount, even if you're just doing it solo, to just continue working. It'll also give you that insight, and also you'll find the fun way faster. If you're working in a vacuum, that's gonna hurt your game the most, because you would have been working for 3 4 years on something that sucks. Like it just, unfortunately, it just like you would have been way better off finding some other idea, and that other idea you would have found that it's fun within like 5 minutes. You like pick it up. It's like some Mario controller, let's just say. You pick it up, you start moving it. There's nothing in the scene, and you're already enjoying it. Why are you enjoying it? Is because you found something fun. All you need to do is just continue chasing it until you get there,
Yeah.
I'm actually a part of a lot of discords with game devs, just like indie devs or like all various backgrounds. And one that stands out in particular are just a bunch of friends that meet up every 2 to 3 weeks to play each other's games, to do like a playtest live, share your screen on Discord, and just give critique during and after. And it helps them a lot. Like every single one of them has released something on Steam, and they're working on their second or third project or whatever, and it keeps them motivated to, oh, in 2 weeks I need something more, I need something more, I need something more. And this community that you build, you could even do it here. I mean, you could just throw it in the Show Your Games channel and ask people, can you play test this? Can you give me critique? And here is pretty good because it's not just programmers. It's gonna be like an artist that says, hey, like this doesn't look that good or it doesn't play that good. Like I'm sure artists know what feels good in the game too, right? Like anyone could know that.
Yeah, and
Um,
your goal when like I'm just imagining some hypothetical scenario where what you want to do specifically is that you're always all you're interested in is just like if you just align your sights for a moment instead of thinking like I'm gonna make the grandest game and make $1 million or whatever the hell, you just think of like what I want to do is I just want to make something that at the end of the week these people are gonna play, and my only goal is to like I want to scare them or like I want to make them cry or like I want to make them, I want to torture them, like or something.
That's
Like you just
great.
want to, yeah,
Oh my
like you
god. Okay.
that's a way when you lower your scope mentally in what you're doing, you're just gonna find something hilarious and fun, and that will be like you'll have immediate feedback, and it's just like you're making like a Sokoban, and then you're just like making the lives of your playtesters hell, and that's what you enjoy doing. Um, yeah, I think just once again, just follow the fun. Try to just do game development as something specifically that's gonna give you short term enjoyment rather than some huge payoff at the end, because that huge payoff at the end may never come, and you're just kind of like wasting your time.
yep. I will add a little note there is on top of the point for having a partner or a team is that a lot of publishers and a lot of grants, they want to see a solid team with a solid background. So even if you're an indie for like 4 years, or you worked AAA for 3, 4 years, and you also had an indie studio and you made an indie game alone, the moment you go and try to get a publisher or a grant and you don't have that solid team to back you, you look a little weaker, right? And it's still possible. It's still 100% possible. Like when I was working on a mobile game, I got reached out to by a publisher as well, and they're asking for changes, this and that, and doing it solo, it motivated me, but it also burnt me out. So I think there's a lot of reasons to keep that community together. And even if you make that community where you meet up once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if it ever came the time where you're like, I need a team to work on my game because a publisher's interested, you know where to look. You don't have to start putting up ads or anything. You just have this team that you know and you've probably worked together at some point. So
I think yeah, and I think what Ari said is very cool too. Like to enjoy a game and to enjoy what you're doing, like making a game with I don't know, like your vision in mind, I guess. Just like make a game with that like emotion or vision that you want to make that game with. So like if I want to make a horror game, I want to scare people, and that might motivate me to push a little further to that. And I think Alex said this a little before, but the best ideas come from when you least expect it as well, which I think is really, really important. Uh,
very true.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
just live
yeah,
your life.
have fun basically. I mean, like, yeah, like life isn't just about work and that stuff. You don't want to be sitting there talking, like working every day of your life for the rest of your life. You want to do stuff with your life. You want to go out, have fun with your friends. Like, don't like you get one night. I don't know. You go to a bar with some friends. You get a little drunk. Like that. That's good. You take care of yourself. As long as you're taking care of yourself, I think that's good for you. Yeah, just have fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, go
Have a
out there and
life.
experience go out there and experience things. It's gonna come to you. Maybe in your a drunken stupor you'll come up with like a great idea or
The
something.
best ideas come from sitting on the toilet.
Yeah. There's
Oh
just
my god.
it is true that like there's you tense up trying to like find the perfect solution or whatever. And as soon as you detense, that's when your subconscious grants you it. It's like it's a very fun little back and forth. And I also there are some like, I wouldn't say a horror story necessarily, just could be that, I have some friends that have focused way too intensely on working. Like all they do is like in order for me to be happy, I need to finish this thing. It's like it's been 7 years. Like when are you gonna be happy exactly? And there's been so many moments where if you just weren't so like tight about work or like focusing on just like doing the job, that you could have been enjoying every moment along the way, but you weren't because you feel like you need to finish something to feel good. And that's not the case. You could just enjoy the moment, play games, be lazy, just enjoy your life, go do things.
It's
Yeah.
not playing games; it's doing research.
It is doing
Yeah.
research, yeah.
The best thing. I love seeing people in class when they're playing games and that stuff because it's like, oh, they're doing research. Obviously, they're totally listening to the prof as well. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I guess that kind of leads on to our final question, just before we can get into, because I think we've had a couple of questions from people as well. This kind of is like a two-in-one question. Um, is there what did you guys use to get your jobs? If you had a internship or a competition you did to get that internship, I know there's the Ubisoft Next and that kind of stuff. And that's also the same thing as our final question, which is how did you get your current job, or what kind of inspired it, and why did you guys also choose the indie route on top of that? But I guess we kind of answered a lot of that, so
Yeah.
We can wrap
Well,
it up.
I think it's like obviously but I did the Ubisoft Next challenge last year. I didn't win. I got third place, which is still good, obviously. But with first place, you get a job. And as soon as I finished school, I got a job in the VR industry because someone saw Zix, the game we're working on. He really liked it, sent me an email, went through the interview process and everything, and got a job. But then a month into that job, Ubisoft messaged me again for another interview because they needed someone. So just the fact that I did the competition and showed my work, it was enough to, get that call back when because they needed someone. Then they didn't have to put up a posting. They could just look at my work and see like there's your technical challenge. This is this is what I did. So that's how I got my job specifically. Was that I decided one day I'm gonna do the Ubisoft Next challenge. One of the profs that used to work here, Tom, he always encouraged people to do the challenge, and he kept pestering me really to do the challenge. And so I did it in like 3 days. I didn't expect anything from it. I just had fun with it. Uh, but I put my all into it for sure. I treated it like a game jam. I know you get like a month to make an engine or something, but you don't really need the whole month. Who knows? Like maybe it would have been better if I used the whole month, but that's what got me my job. But I think it's like a culmination of the amount of time I've spent learning programming throughout my life. Uh, and honestly, I was kind of a noob when I was a kid, programming alone, making little servers and mods. But all those principles came to me when I made my own stuff as a professional dev. And there's definitely Ubisoft Next for students. I think Develop at Ubisoft is around now, which is I think it's only for females. Um, Other than that, I think GBC also has contract work, internships, promotions, stuff like that. Like it's very viable. There's a guy here. His name is JP. He runs the design program. He's like pretty much the guy. He has connections. If you get good with him, he'll probably reach out to you and give you something or tell you something. And the only way you'll even get him on your radar or you'll get on his radar is if you do those promotion projects that they talk about where you work in a team of other students and you make a project. And I definitely highly recommend you go through that path because working in that team with people that do modeling and people that do animation, people that do game design, it teaches you to work in a team, but also you learn so much along the way because you won't necessarily go through these challenges unless that team had this idea that wanted this and putting in a custom animation or this gameplay mechanic that you've never thought of adding to your own solo project. You're not really going to get that unless you work in that team. But that being said, maybe you want to spend that whole semester working on your own thing or whole year working on your own thing. It's really about your own path. But I think going for those team projects really helps you stand out and helps you get those connections and network while you're in college.
yeah, that's really, really important. I think when you look at someone's LinkedIn that doesn't tell them their full story, there's a lot of underlying projects that they've done in the past that hasn't worked out for them quite well. It's really hard to kind of detail someone off of that, but at the same time,
you want to get out those projects. You want to get out at least something for other, like for example, how Ubisoft contacted you. They saw your like next project. Like that's what Tom also told me. He's like, you're good enough to do it. Go and do it. If you can do it, it doesn't matter how bad it is. You have something out there. They can look at that at least instead of just there's nothing there. You've lost that door. That door is closed now. You've kept that door open by just making a project and putting it out
I
there.
will say that last year, the top 3 people in programming all got hired, including me. So the first place guy got a job. He works on Splinter Cell now. Second place guy got a job. I think I work with him, but he's in a different team. And then I got a job. And who knows who else got a job? Because I've even heard stories about a guy who didn't place at all, but he made a solid engine and he got hired. And I don't know how many years ago this was, but they saw that code and they said, "All right, it's not a good game. I don't want it for the competition, whatever. Maybe he was disqualified because he used an include or something, but they saw his work and saw that he's a good programmer. So I think that it's important to get your name out there. And I will say that while you're in school, work on games, work on projects as much as you can. I don't think you're going to be able to survive off making your portfolio entirely things you did in college, just the assignments, because you're going to, if you think about it, you're going to end school, 3rd year, you graduated, and you and 50 other people are going to have the same projects on your portfolio. And you want to stand out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, about the like whole JP thing for anyone who's here from George Brown, I think he's actually our teacher advisor for this entire club. So if there's any sort of events or anything or like projects he has, I'm gonna try to reach out to him and see if I can announce them here for you guys as well, so you can kind of start that process of getting into these things. Because I know last year something I really struggled with was lack of communication, and it took me actually a friend who came up to me and went, "Hey, there's these game development projects they're doing, and I think you could do one on Unity and that kind of stuff." And that's something that really, just like those opportunities, really helps you to learn more and more every time.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how I got my first job. I graduated college. I was extremely tired. I worked with someone, and that person kind of like fucked me over during like my capstone presentation, and they kind of like all I wanted to do after graduating is just wanted to crawl in a hole and die. That's what I felt at that moment.
It's
But
like,
then what happened is, basically I went on, I just had basically a vacation away from college. I did whatever the hell I wanted for a while. I was living at my parents'. I did a little bit of like work on the side whenever I could get it, but generally, that would be more like graphics design or freelance or whatever. But the idea is that one of my friends that I made in college, he just hit me up as like, "Hey man, like, I do you want a job from this person? Like, I kind of applied, but I kind of don't want it." And he said, "Do you know anyone that would be good for this role?" And he just threw it to me, and I'm like, "Sure, I'll give it a try." I hit him up. That's how I got my first job. It was a matter of I had a friend that was just in the program that was also applying, because it might come down to you like that. You might apply in a billion places. One of you would apply a billion places. You get a job at some place, and then you might get a bunch of callbacks from everywhere else, and you say, "Sorry, I already got a job." And then they will ask you, "Do you know anyone?" And that might be, you might direct one of your friends to it. So making connections is important, and I'll also bring that up to the way that we got how I first pitched Zix, was actually that one of Tam's friends from college, his name is Dave, and he's really into the basically the production side of it. He's working in his game for 4 years or something. I think he teaches at George Brown College. But basically now he does, but he posted that there was going to be, during the pandemic, a meet and match, which is just basically like an online conference where you can just like book some time with random people. I just went online. I signed up. I put my little game link in there and whatever, and I just like I tried to get meetings with a bunch of people that I thought would be fun. Some people just like got meetings with me specifically because of my whatever I had on my portfolio. Um, and one of those people was a biz dev agent that knew the person at Meta, and basically for like 10% of whatever the funding was, she would basically give me a route directly to him. which is actually difficult to do from the Meta starter program. You go through a bunch of checks to get there. But because I had this connection in the industry that I randomly made as a result of going to this conference, I was able to talk to him directly. And because of that, partly because we worked so hard on our game and like it was pretty good at the time, the it just worked out. But connections are really important. That just means being open to whatever comes around. Yeah, stuff like doing competitions. Because, for example, I did a random mobile jam competition just for shits. Um, a few years ago, and I made this quick mobile game in a game jam in like 24 hours, and immediately I had three different mobile publishers reaching out to me, and they got me through going through the entire ringer of like making the demo fairly solid, like it didn't have to be super intense, but then making videos for it, and then they ran ad checks for those videos. Unfortunately, it didn't do as well as they thought it would, so they just kind of like skipped that idea. But they told me, if you have any other mobile ideas, we'd love to see them, and we're gonna do that same process. But uh, you have no idea what kind of opportunities are out there and what people are watching. Um, it might be that an indie game jam thing catches the attention of some random guy, and he's just like, "Yo, can we like publish this, or could I give you?" But yeah, putting yourself out there is important for all of these, right? No matter what,
Yeah.
you have to put yourself out there. And if you don't, even in the sense like the person that I hired that is our current like I'm like kind of the lead creative director slash game designer. I'm really good at UX and game design, but this person I specifically hired because I saw how good they are from their Twitter. They never had a job before, realistically. Like they've worked on like other indie projects. They have a decent portfolio, but they're constantly posting cool gifs on Twitter. And I'm like, wow, you're like awesome. So I just sent a message to them and I said, hey, do you need like a job? Um, I was one of those people that would reach out. So even if you just like post on your Twitter, you might have me reaching out to you and being like, do you want a job? You
Yeah.
just need to show your shit.
I
If
think
you
if you
don't,
think about it, like if Saul never met that friend in college, he wouldn't get his first job. If I didn't listen to Tom and enter the next program, I wouldn't have my job, you know. If we didn't start Zix, then I wouldn't have gotten the VR job. And if they didn't post on Twitter, then they wouldn't have gotten a job with us. I mean, we even have one employee, our art director. He worked at Epic Games as a senior concept artist at doing Fortnite concepts. And we just inspired him with our game design and our vision, and it was enough for him to leave that stable senior position, making like nearly 200,000 a year to come work with us in this indie studio because he believed in our game. And we just took that risk too. We just messaged them in our art station, said, "Hey, we like your shit. Come for
yeah,
an interview."
I
And
actually didn't even realize he was working at Epic. I just kind of was like, "Hey, your art looks kind of cool." I just sent the message. It
That's
was
fair.
it's just a lot of happy accidents exist here. Bob Ross would be proud.
Very, very proud. Yeah, connections, very important stuff. Um, yeah, I really like your guys' thought process on putting stuff out there and just seeing people. They don't even have to have a job. They don't even have to have a LinkedIn, for God's sake. Just it's there. You see their stuff on like Twitter or something. And you're like, that guy's cool, or that girl, or whoever it is. That person is so cool. Like that's sick. So yeah, that's all the questions I had for you guys today. If you guys are alright with answering a couple questions from our community over here.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, so I did have one question to start off with. I have two questions that I know for sure we have, and if you guys want to add any more, just put them in the text chat, and I can, or if you guys want to come up and actually say them on the voice, just come like raise your hand, or I don't know how to do it on here. Just send me a message and I'll put you up here. So our first question, I guess. Okay, here we go. Yes. So I have it from Bar, who said it a little bit ago. He asked, "Does your game cover multiple platforms such as Quest, Indexed, Rift S? If so, what were the hurdles you had to overcome during that process? Would you suggest like perfecting one platform before moving on to the next?"
Honestly,
Definitely.
for
Yeah, start with PC. Start with the easiest development environment, because otherwise, like, you don't want to put a whole bunch of fucking like blockers between you and just making something that works well and plays good. Do it with the way that you can iterate the fastest. And that would be like, if you could just like plug in your headset and it's on your PC and you press play and it's in VR and you're already accessing it, great. That's the way you should start. Because you
If
can
we're
always
if we're
port it after.
we're talking about VR specifically, by the way, I would say do not use any assets. Essentially, everything's just a white box level. Your characters are circles. You don't have particles. You don't need it to look good to make it feel good,
Yeah,
and you don't need to
exactly.
waste the time on the visuals. And then once you do port it to Quest 2, Quest 2 can handle boxes. They can handle cubes. They can handle anything. To answer the question, yes, we do work on Quest 2. We have Quest 3s now. We work on Quest 3s, obviously, because Quest 3s are better. And we work on Steam VR. And we use OpenXR, which works on everything. But we run Steam VR, and that can run the Pico. It can run a Quest that's linked with Oculus Link. It can run the Valve Index. It can run anything. You just have to. I think OpenXR has controller inputs that are essentially universal, but sometimes the offsets are a little bit different. So you have to account for different offsets in your hands and stuff like that. In terms of like technical hurdles in Quest 2, there are a lot. It's like you're making a mobile game because it's an Android build on your headset, and the headset's not very powerful either because it has to render two eyes, two cameras constantly, and it's not very capable, to be honest. The Quest 2, like you can't have too much transparency, you can't have too many draw calls. There's a lot of hurdles to follow. Quest 3 is a lot better. Basically, with an unoptimized scene, Quest 3 runs great. It's beautiful. We're very happy to be on Quest 3. Um, but Quest 2 is comparable to like making a game for GameCube. Like if you play a GameCube game, you're gonna notice like, oh, there's no real time lighting. There's no, the graphics are kind of, So you have to work through some things, and you have to be kind of smart about it.
Yes, boxes and circles, my favorite assets.
Yeah, and just one note there is like, uh, it is still like for most of the pitching process, we did not have a Quest 2 build. We showed them a PC build. And we said we can port it to the Quest 2. And part of the platform funding is they pay you to port. They give you money, and part of your budget is like porting it to the console that they want. But I will say, throughout that process, while we were pitching, it's like they did say, ideally, if you're pitching for these, we want to see it running in a Quest 2, because if we see that you can't run on a Quest 2, then you're lacking certain skills that you need. That they don't want to take that risk if you can't even get it on the console running
They
that.
know how hard it is, so
They know it's hard. Yeah, exactly. So it's like I think in general when we took it, we used Unity, we used URP to allow us to have like decent graphics performance across the board, and we had some things in mind in general of like, let's not make our fidelity way too high. Let's not start on HDRP. Let's use URP. Let's try to keep our poly counts relatively low. And when we first ported it to Quest, there was like 40 50 FPS or something is what we're getting, maybe even 30. It's still something that you can show them, be like, it's running, but we need to do a bunch of optimization. If you tell them what kinds of optimizations you have left, at the very least they see it on the platform. It is kind of important, and I will say visuals are kind of important. Like it's not just that you get your boxes and circles and you get your basic prototype done. There's two sides of it. They need to kind of see what a lot of people call a beauty corner, just to give you an idea of like, here's kind of, because art matters so much, unfortunately. Just to give you the idea that like, it's not just like this weird. You have some vision for the game, even if it's like lossy. You can be like, oh, the general tone is that this game is supposed to be a bit darker and like moody. Maybe it has more specific types of colors or something. It's not perfect, but there's just something there that is other than gray box. But I mean, you can also approach it with like, listen, I'm just really good at mechanics. I need to get artists. This is why I kept the
Mhm.
gray box. Like there's a lot of ways to pitch it.
I
Ours
think
definitely
gray
had art.
boxing is important for starting and making your game, and making sure it plays and feels good.
Yeah, yeah,
But you
definitely.
should get to art at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like a general impression. You don't want to leave it potentially so that it's like, it's just like mechanics and I've got no idea of what I want to do potentially. It's just like, if you can, whatever you can do with your limited skills, try, but be super explicit to everyone that you pitch to, saying, I'm not an artist. I'm not good at art. I tried my best, but I really need someone that's an art director. That's why I'm applying for funding, right? That's we stumbled a couple of times because people looked at our game and it looked just good enough for it to be like, wait, is this your vision? Is this your full vision? And I'm just like, oh shit, like I should really mention that I'm not an artist. But the easiest way would have been to just show them gray boxes. Be like, it's obvious. I'm not an artist. This is prototypes. I'm focusing on gameplay. But when I was pitching, there were certain parts of my art that were like, oh, this is really awesome. If you kept things at this quality across the board, like this would be a really awesome game. I could kind of see it's not a yeah. I couldn't say for sure if we would have still got the funding if there was zero art. You know, there might be
Hard to
something
say
to it.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's like the teachers in high school and elementary. They're like, okay, guys, I'm not an artist, and they write like the most basic ass cube possible. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
so yeah, one other question I had from Loft. He asked, "What are some major inspirations for you to begin game developing slash mechanics of your game?"
Okay, so I guess I'll take this on just because I think I'm the one who sort of built a lot of those foundational mechanisms in. I have so many different like mechanical ideas. That's kind of what I like to do. So the way that I oftentimes inspired is like I try. I think similar to um how Nintendo takes their approach is I love physics. Physics is really fun for me. It can make stuff very very fun very quickly. And I generally the way that my head space works, and it's so many different game designers and they approach this differently. But just my specific thing is that I'm really into momentum. I skateboard a lot in my free time, and I can tune into what feels good from a momentum perspective, and also what feels good. Like I just kind of understand like what feels good because I played enough games and I've seen what I don't like. Like I'll play games that are like I don't like that and therefore maybe I could let's like because I know what I don't like, I can also try to figure out how to improve it or like have some hypothesis like way hypothesis about is that the word? I don't know.
Hmm.
About what I would do to improve this and that oftentimes will spawn a game idea. I'm like, well, if I did this in my way, this is what I would do and that gives me some bearing for mechanical big like something basic but oftentimes what you can do is like grab a little physics object like a ball and just add like bouncing to it and just like try to move it around with your joystick and just see how it feels um just or make a little marble game and just kind of add a tiny mechanic as you keep going and then you might find a really fun thing. It might be a lot of people say like sometimes bugs will give you inspiration, right? just just sit down, start making something, and then oftentimes, I mean, on my end, I will be doing something, either playing some other game and just having ideas that way, or I'll be outside, skateboarding or dicking around with my friends, um, or watching some movie. I'd be watching some movie and I see how something moves or how something seems to interact. I'm like, that would be cool to reproduce. Let me try to do that. Uh, the act of reproducing something oftentimes you're in it and you're like oh what if I just change this one thing that immediately will show you some weird mechanic like you say you're making Metroid and then you're like oh what if I just swap that bullet out for like this weird like pig NPC that I made and now you have a gun that shoots pigs and you're like huh what could I do with this maybe I like when you shoot the pig you can like jump on it and ride on it like I don't know like just there's a very loose open way of um basically digging into the possibility space of mechanics. And but the best thing is just to, just sit down, kind of like look at something that you like, try to reproduce it, and along that way you'll find a fun mechanic. I think that's a almost all of my games that I've made, which have a lot of like I have a lot of really cool mechanics that I'm still it's in my bucket of stuff I'm gonna pull from as the company like grows. Hopefully, that I think are solid mechanics that came purely from experimentation. And that's just how I work. I've met lots of game designers that like to do it on paper instead of just code it out. I'm fairly fast at prototyping because of all the game jams. And I just like to see it. I like to play it. I like to send builds out to people and just see how what they think about it. Some people just like doing it on paper. they can imagine the entire game playing out in their head. That's also a valid route. Just I think the best thing is just sit down and start trying to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think bugs are really great too. Because bugs can like inspire you.
For
Like I
sure.
love when a
Yeah.
game comes out and it's really buggy and you can find something that's really fun to play with. Like I remember playing Skate 1 and they never even took this bug out, but if you did a what are they called? A manual. Like you do a manual and then you do a revert and then you do a hard flip, you just fly in the air and it gives you a lot of points and shit. And I thought that was the most fun part about that game. And everyone was doing it online and I wanted to know how to do it. And that made like one of the best features in that game is a bug. And then they took it out in the second one and ruined it.
Yeah.
But
Also, like one of your favorite games, if I remember, is Guns the Duel, and
yes.
the entire meta. The reason why you even played it is because
Tons of
the
animation bugs.
the animation
Yep.
bugs turned into weird mechanics that made you feel like a super ninja of some kind that can like deflect
Yep.
bullets and attack at the same time.
You have to be physically skilled to play that game. You have to, double tap the W key, switch weapons constantly, slash your sword at the right time, dash at the right time. That game was like pure skill. And then they released the second one and ruined it. So,
Aw.
maybe stick to your bugs. We
Yeah,
do
for
have a
It's
sure.
bug in our
yeah.
game
The
where we pull out a shield and you can skateboard with it, and people loved it, you know?
Yeah, I get
Oh,
what you guys mean. Yeah, I definitely feel that. Whenever I have a game I want to test out, I'll give it to my brother, and he will break the everlasting shit out of it. And it's so funny watching it happen because, like, it's just so much more fun when you can see the bugs and play with them. And some of the bugs are obviously you have to fix, but some of them are really cool and I think
No,
deserve
no,
to be
you should pay attention to the ones. Pay attention to the ones your playtesters are like, whoa, and then just be like, what if the whole game was this? I think that would be that's a fun way to make something.
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. So, if you guys don't mind, we got a couple more questions here. We got another one from Nick here. He's asking two questions actually. I'll start off with the first one. What aspects of your professional experience has trickled down into the way you function slash run your own studio?
I think in terms of like tax credits and tax purposes and timelines and stuff like that, there's a couple of things you want to do as a company in Canada where you have to track time and you don't really do that as an indie. You just put up a Trello ticket and you call it a day. But when you start paying people and you start realizing that you can get money back for tracking this sort of time because something they did was research and development, or your company meets a certain specific set of criteria to get a tax credit, now you're gonna have to start tracking time. So we're trying to adopt
Shred, yeah.
Jira. Shred is one of them. Yeah. Our company's based
That's the
in
main one for
for
like
most.
documenting. Yeah,
Yes.
it's the main one for documenting. But I think getting in the
Uh,
habit of documenting helps because it's like talking to the duck, that classic technique of if you just talk out your problem
yeah.
and you try to document things, you'll find that like really quickly you're like, wait a minute, this makes no damn sense. The
There's no
amount
way
of
we're gonna
times
finish this in a month.
I've thrown out tickets while writing them like 3, 4 times. I was just like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. I need to throw this out. And then I make a new ticket and I start writing out the description again. I think it makes sense. And then while I'm thinking about it, once again, it makes no sense. And I go back to it. Um, it's good to get in a habit of documentation, like just like
Yep.
talking to yourself.
Oh no,
Yeah,
documentation.
100%. So Jira is one thing we brought on because Jira has ticketing, has epics, which is a like imagine like one task is that you need to do enemies. That's an epic. And then a task underneath that epic would be like work on I don't know, the Goomba. The Goomba is a task, right? And then you have time tracking for not only the larger criteria, but for the smaller criteria. You can do time estimates. You can do what is called story points, which kind of don't matter, but it just means like how complex is this task. So you can kind of gauge how long it would take to do.
My bias is that Scrum shit like that made no sense ever. It doesn't work. But if maybe
Yes,
someone
that should never make
it
sense.
doesn't make any fucking sense. People, it just feels like a like we get into it and now we're just playing a game of make believe and wasting time, and then like it doesn't
This
has no
task is worth
bearing.
1,000 lines of code.
Yeah, yeah. What would be way more useful? And I think one thing that for sure that I've learned from stuff that I bring into my own company is having regular daily meets and meetings, because the worst thing you could do for yourself is allow everyone to work in their little silos, and then you guys at the end have something that makes no fucking sense together, right? Like you can do it every other day if you want. It's what works for your company, but I think if you don't if you don't get everyone to sort of keep in touch with like what they're doing today, and just like the easiest way to do that is a meeting. You just like meet for 15 minutes, be like, go around the table going, what are you doing today? Because someone might say, I'm doing this thing, and then you're like, wait a minute, why are you doing this thing? Where you're on some weird path, and we have deadlines in 2 weeks. Can we just like, you sort of you get realigned, because people do get misaligned constantly because they have their own, you might be saying something, everyone's in agreement, but you don't understand each other actually. And that's why
Mm.
daily meets help you kind of keep that in line. And it's really hard for me at the moment because I'm also dealing with like, my own job's daily meets, so I have to find the time to do it. Um, but if we were on here full time, we would be having daily meetings, even just 15
Oh
minutes.
yeah.
And through that process, you also help each other a lot. You help each other a lot. Someone might be talking about their problem. You turn into a conversation. Not to mention, especially the remote teams, you feel sometimes like you're alone in solving the challenge. And when you feel alone, you also feel less inspired. You might feel lost. You're like, I don't know what to do today, but you don't want to like ask what to do today, whatever. When you're in those meetings, you have to say, what are you doing today? How is that coming? So it's like immediately somebody's like, oh, there you go. Like, I can help you with that. If you don't know what to do, like let's chat for a bit. Let's go into like a private little chat and just like figure out what to do next. Um, that way you keep progress going, and it's not like a negative thing because everyone aligns, and you also feel that the more human connection that you're supposed to have in like a studio environment of like everyone's around you, everyone's working, you can hear clicking on the keyboards, and you can see people like having those reactions. It influences you to want to do the work, because feeling lost is the worst thing. Like that's the part where it's like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like you just do nothing. But when you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, you have a great outline. You know that you've got this team that can back you up if you ever get lost. And really, I try to enforce, like, if anyone gets lost at any moment, always just like hit us up. We're gonna jump into a call together at any point, and we will just like talk it out for a second, setting up that like culture, as some like corporations call it, um helps a lot with the development process. And that's what I learned from it. It's one of those things where I don't think I've seen the jobs that don't have this, and I'm like, this is bad. And like I kind of don't do everyone's not doing as good a work as possible. And then I've been a part of teams where they do this every other day or something, and I'm like, this is pretty good. But on those off days, I'm like, you know what? I've been lost sometimes, and I feel like I just needed to like talk to someone. Opening that door every day to talk to each other, it it it'll make you get to your goals faster, and not to mention iterate and pivot faster, because you might be going down a route altogether that's not right. And that's why also, Tam always and kind of always talks about this, and I try to like also say this is, Fridays should be test days. Whatever you guys have been working on, even if you made nothing, even if it's the same build from last week,
It's
jump in
called a
and
feel. It's called a feel Fridays. Feel it out.
Feel Friday. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
actually didn't know that, but that's an important one. Feel out your game every week. You might come up with some thing that like you didn't realize before, or someone would find some new bug, or the best thing you can do for yourself is find the fact that your game is broken as soon as possible. If it's like there's some fundamental mechanic that is just broken and it's making the game worse, the easiest way to find that is just play your game, feel it out. Doing it with your team is amazing. We made a multiplayer VR game, and what kind of beautiful thing about that is that we're actually just in the game together, oftentimes, and we'll be talking to each other in there while playing. And we even have like some UGC stuff, like we can just like make levels in game. So we'll be talking, making levels, jumping around, hypothesizing about stuff. It turns into a really fun Friday meeting, and we also try to set it up in a progress where we're not super strict on like you working your time that you need to do. But that's why we like Monday we set up what are we doing by the time Friday comes around, and making sure that
Mm.
our management style sets up expectations properly so that by Friday we have something decent. every week, because otherwise, like tracking people too closely is kind of not a good vibe. You don't want it with
Yeah.
like indies and stuff. So you kind of just want to let them do their thing, but make
No
sure
one
that
wants
we
to be
are working.
micromanaged
No one wants to be
ever.
micromanaged. Seniors for sure shouldn't be micromanaged, and um, yeah, I think let people come to you for advice and stuff.
So Ubisoft has about 4 recurring meetings where every day I have a daily stand up, 10 or 11 a.m. changes, and then every week we have a weekly roundtable, which has more people, like 30 people, because it includes artists and etc. that are doing the same part of the game. But in the mornings, I only meet with like the programming team that does essentially the same thing. It helps understand what other people are doing. Sometimes you'll hear someone say something that they're working on, and they're kind of, they don't understand what to do, or they clearly say that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And you can message them and tell them, like, hey, here's my expertise on the subject. Then we have like the monthly team meeting, and then we have a show and tell every couple of weeks where people just show stuff they're working on in different teams. I think for the benefit of an indie studio that doesn't pay their employees, the best option, in my opinion, is probably the weekly roundtable where you meet up weekly, talk about what you've done. But I've had a weekly roundtable, quote unquote, at a contract I've worked on. And what happened was, after a week of working on something, I came back and it wasn't what they wanted. So now we all wasted a week essentially. They wasted a week paying me, I wasted a week working on something, and it basically almost got thrown out. It had to be repurposed. So I think it's important that especially if you're paying people, to have more common stand-ups and more common meetings to make sure everything's on the right track.
Yeah,
'Cause you don't want to end
our
up
company
giving
is small,
someone,
so
yeah, you don't want to give someone like do this art, do this concept, and they come back to you a week later. It's nothing like what you wanted. You didn't see their process at all, and they wasted time drawing, right? So
Yeah, having that. I think one of the most important things, especially about a team, is having that connection and the like what's it called again? The difference between you being like a human to them and then you obviously being your like their employer basically. Like having a balance of that, I think, is very important, and just having fun with them as well.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, definitely set deadlines, but don't be very strict. You have to realize that sometimes things don't work out either. So
Well, especially
if
the
you if you
arts.
say a week deadline, you can probably just assume it's two. Double it up.
yeah,
Yeah, almost every producer says that. Any time estimate you have, double it.
interesting. Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's actually a really really good point. Okay, so second question from Nick here. He said, "I think it is so commendable that both of you are working full time in the game development industry and are developing your own game. How do you schedule your time to do both of these very time consuming jobs?"
Afterwards, I think like I have a set time. Like it's like 10 to 4 or something at my job, technically, but most people work 9 to 5. So after 5 o'clock, I'm free essentially. Maybe I'll squeeze it in at lunch or something if it's truly important. I can also step out as I please, being a remote worker. So if I just say like, hey, I'm busy for the next hour, it's no biggie. But I try not to spend any company time on my project. That's mainly reserved for like a medical appointment or something. So 5 o'clock hits and it's time to start talking about our indie project. Saul, on the other hand, his schedule's kind of open considering he's like very senior in at Unity. So he just has to get shit done, and
Yeah,
I like
if you hit seniority, and you go to a company that values that seniority, especially, I will say, like, thank God for the pandemic, because almost everyone, is remote now. So there's a bunch of remote, people act differently in a remote setting. People are starting to pull you back into the office a little bit, but once you get a level of seniority, generally they're way more lenient on stuff, because losing seniors sucks. If you're just starting out, it's a little harder to do this kind of stuff, but generally, yeah, you have to do it after work. Like, you finish your job, then you start doing your other job. If you can't do that, I'm doing a lot of management stuff for the employees, so it's a bit harder for me to just push stuff to the weekend, because people work during the week. So I just need to do the meetings like during the day, you know. Um, Yeah. About some like oftentimes I don't know. Like I barely have any time lately with the two jobs, because it's like I said with the management stuff. Before it was like I'll work the weekends and I'll work any nights that I can. Now because I'm managing everyone and I'm doing the creative direction and just like also fundraising is taking a shit ton of time. Like writing the documents that I need to pitch. Um, all of it takes an insane amount of time that half the time I barely have breaks. I like my time for a break is like maybe a few hours every day, like if I'm lucky. Usually, yeah, I kind of I just don't have that much time right now, but the
Yeah,
idea is that
it's really not
once
easy.
we get full funding, that's what we always have this in mind of like when we get the rest of our funding that we need, we can finally be more comfortable with taking that off and just working on the thing. But at the moment, I'm just swinging whatever I can. This is what I was trying to say. Like making your own company sounds cool. It is cool in a lot of ways, but it's also um be prepared to like have no time to yourself
No
and
vacations,
no
nothing.
vacation. Every I took a 4 week vacation from Unity. That entire 4 weeks, even when we went to a cottage, I was working on a Canada Media Fund application, which took like
Yep.
all of my mental energy and time. Like there was no
Yeah,
time
it's
for
like
myself
30
during that.
pages of hell, as we call it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it
And we
might
did
be
that
worth it. It
twice.
might not. Who knows?
Tam wasted his vacation on the first time we did the application. We didn't get through that time. We tried to take all of the notes they gave us and redid the second one. We killed both of our vacations doing this. So it's
Yeah.
like
Oh
it
my
is not
god.
a luxurious thing to be doing this. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's really really difficult and it's gonna be difficult up until the point where you succeed. But I even know studios that have succeeded, and they've grown their studio considerably, like 30 people, whatever. Their monthly burn rate is like $350,000. Can you imagine being in a company where you have to make sure that next month you have to have $350,000 in your wallet? Um,
It's
this
insane.
is
Yeah, it's unimaginable, honestly.
I'm like there's been times for sure where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore because I think about
Yeah.
this stuff and I'm like, that's way too fucking scary. I just want to take the meta money. I want to go to a farm and raise chickens and like disappear from the world. Like that's what I feel, but I have to, push that down and like chill a little bit. Go clearly at that point, if I'm thinking that way, I need to go take a rest. So I'll be like, take my weekend and really take it rather than spend it working.
Yeah,
But like,
right now
yeah.
we're kind of like we work our jobs after work or off hours. We work on Zix or have a meeting or just plan things out. And on the weekend we actually, do some programming. But it's not just that. Like we also have to do like accounting and task management, time
Oh
management.
my
We have to
God,
we have
yeah.
to pay people. We have to run payroll. Everything's a time sink. And that's probably the worst part about it is doing administration. So when you don't have like the money to pay an accountant $1,000 a month. Like you have to sit there and reconcile invoices and do billing, and like it's not the most fun part of owning a company, like by far. Like I wish we could just make games. I wish we could just do what we
Yeah,
love,
I mean, we,
but
we want to hire someone that, like, a producer is supposed to do a lot of this stuff. We were considering hiring a producer who's just really organized and stuff. They're just, they're expensive. We have some producers that we have on like basically like whenever we need like a consulting. But if I get the full funding and I can hire a producer to deal with the management side of things, then I can focus on doing what I'm good at, more presently. But that being said, wearing all those hats, you learn a lot. Like my ability to pitch projects has gone from zero to like quite commendable to the point where the meta person keeps asking for my pitch deck to show to other people to show them like this is the quality level you're looking for. Right? It's like when he first asked me, I'm like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. Like, legitimately, there's no chance this is gonna go well. And then through iteration and whatever, many the years that I've been trying to do this, I've become a lot better of a producer. I could probably land a job as a producer with the skills I have now, which is kind of cool. It just opens up a little door. But that being said, I think if I really want to focus on what I'm good at, I need to kind of put down the producer hat, give it to somebody else, and just do
I
my own
think
thing.
the only thing it taught me was that I don't want to be a producer at all. Like
Yeah.
it's
no.
it's not fun. Like even doing like CMF, like no game developer wants to do that. No one wants to write a 15-page document describing every aspect of their game. And that whole pitching process is just it doesn't make sense for what the industry is because that specifically CMF, they don't even play your game. You show them a video and you write words about it. Like it's not something that game devs are good at. I mean, for the most part. But
Yeah.
you just do it. You need the funds. I mean, you're a
Yeah.
slave to society. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like it's a lot of work, especially like just coming from someone who's just in school really and doesn't do a whole lot otherwise than personal projects. It sounds like when you get to that point, you lose a lot of your free time, and yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
but it's valuable. Like you're gonna feel like holy shit, I'm actually doing something with my life that's like super like this is what I've wanted to do. So there's like the two sides of you're fueling yourself to a certain degree even when you're working. The wins are big. Like the sensation we get from actually getting our game funded is like those are big wins.
Big
Um,
milestones.
big milestones, and then in which case you have, I would say, with those big wins, definitely like celebrate large, celebrate largely. Um,
yeah.
I should have just said
Get your
big. I don't know why
favorite
I said it.
Korean food.
Yeah,
Be happy, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And then back to work.
And yeah, right back to work. Yes, I definitely have
Work
felt
hard,
that one
play hard.
before, and I think some people in this chat can definitely relate to that. If you run, even if it's just like a smaller company or club or whatever it is, like especially running this club, like seeing that 700 member mark is like a you're excited obviously. You got to celebrate what you can, right? Keep your mental up with that kind of stuff. Don't just say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, back onto the next task. Like celebrate that. Make sure you get that uh positive reinforcement there for both you and whoever's working for you or whoever's working in general. Like, yeah. Yeah. So we got another question here. I think we got two more for from Bar here. One of his questions is great games have come from community creation, such as Gary's Mod, Workshop, and Minecraft mod packs. Are you guys for that idea of community editions, or do you feel like that can cause the game to lose its original vision?
We talked about it. At one point, we were thinking
Oh,
about.
are you asking for our game specifically, or just more generally? Do we believe in that? Uh, the games with community. Like, do we believe that every game should have that? Is my
Both,
question. Okay.
if possible.
Both.
If you guys
Okay.
like, if you guys just want to answer one time consuming, it's okay. I get that.
Well, for our game, we thought about it. We talked about it, and at one point, that was generally the plan was to essentially have users create maps and upload them. We do have UGC, so it's kind of like modding in a sense. Like you can create your own space and your own maps, and you can share it with players. So to a degree, we kind of have that, but it's not mods. We believe in Gmod. Gmod's great, and most of what I did
Yeah.
as a kid was mod games, and that's what made me a good game designer, multiplayer designer, a good programmer. It really helped on my journey specifically. Does it have a place in our game in terms of like straight up mods like Blade and Sorcery, which is like the only VR game I really know that can have that type of modding?
Or
Um,
Bone Lab,
might
obviously, like Boneware.
be out of our scope personally. Like
There
for,
are
for our
there
game.
are problems that come with that approach. For me, I don't like the idea. Like for example, VR chat, extremely moddable, right? You can open up Unity, you can like build the entire thing and upload it straight to VR chat, and you have like a world in this like metaverse. Super cool. I've also working at Unity, I work as like a consultant. I see all studios that work with our Unity projects. So I've like worked with VR Chat, I've worked with Rec Room, I've worked with Blizzard, I've worked with tons of different companies, like even Ubisoft, and I've seen what they do with the systems. And generally, what I've seen with like pure UGC is that it turns into the lack of control. It's not like, okay, artistic control is a big one because yeah, obviously your vision becomes super muddled down if you have a vision like that. Like you're trying to give off a certain aesthetic and you go in and then you enter rooms where every character from every game with different styles is in there, and they nothing really fits together in a weird way. It just looks a little bit disjointed. There doesn't that clear vision. It's no longer clear. Um, if you design your game for that purpose, that kind of vibe, super cool for sure. I personally like the other way generally because I just want to see a more cohesive mission, but also there's way less technical challenges that come from assets that are made for your game. Like, because if you start allowing any sort of assets to come to your game, then you start dealing with the stuff that VR chat actually has, which you enter a room and the FPS is at 20 FPS because people are uploading the most ridiculous models there and they serve no consistency. There's no foundations. And also that's a huge reason why VR chat, you can't just be in VR chat and just make stuff. You can't just like, build. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna make that a thing, but I think it's so much. I've just really wanted the sensation of like creation is just embedded into the systems. It looks good. It works well. It still allows for a huge amount of creativity. And I also believe in creativity that has guidelines. Like it's a box. I like the idea of giving you like a certain amount of tools and just seeing what you can do with it. Kind of like Gary's mod that's OG, like not with all the mod support, but like Gary's mod with just the tools you get. I just like seeing what people can do with the limited amount of tools because that really breeds creativity in a way like Mario Maker breeds creativity. Both are UGC, VR Chat and Mario Maker, but like I just really like the Mario Maker approach of keeping everything aligned. That being said, uh Tam's entire career came from modding. Like that's where he started. And I think there are games that, especially if they like Gary's mod, where they're like the whole thing is like it's all about modding, and I'm gonna make this the best modding experience ever. And even like the Bethesda games with the Garden of Eden creation kit, like that's when a game really like takes on that challenge of like making it really good, the stuff that comes out of it is awesome. Like Skyrim is continuing to build as a game. Like that's awesome if you can give that support to your community. There's also the horrible side of it of I've seen games where they're like all I did was like build the modding tools and I gave you this thing that's just a modding tool. There's just nothing else there and they expect the entire community to make something fun. It can be, you know, um a weird route to go. I think I would go the approach personally for Zix, more like Mario Maker, Minecraft, where maybe down the line, like Minecraft, like we would open up the tools to start adding, more blocks and editing mechanics and whatever. Um, maybe at some point. But yeah,
Yeah.
my thoughts on it are that it creates full UGC creates lots of challenges and it makes it hard, especially for a multiplayer game, to make sense of things.
And then your community kind of drives the community in general. Like if your game becomes a lot of like explicit content because you gave creators all that access, then you don't really have much control over that other than like banning them, I guess, or setting down some rules. I think even VR chat has that problem.
I think the one thing that made Gary's mod really good is that they already had a fan base before that, before ever making that kind of game, like with Half-Life and that kind of stuff, and adding all that kind of stuff into Gary's mod probably helped a lot,
Oh
which is
yeah, yeah.
really
They
good.
had such a great foundation of content. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
also just because a lot of people were connected to that content already. They loved Half-Life and Counter-Strike and Team Fortress, so
Yes, so if you're
yeah.
thinking of ever making the next Gary's mod, make sure you have a little bit of a foundation first, like a strong, solid foundation of a fan base that you think might enjoy that kind of creativity.
Well, Gary's making the next Gary's mod. It's called Sandbox.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think Bar had another question. Are you guys still cool with answering questions? Or
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
don't
think
have
I
we don't
think
have a meeting today, right? So,
yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out with the art director, but generally yeah, we still have some time. I mean, obviously we should I don't know how long this meeting can go on for. I
yeah,
don't know. If everyone's still engaged here, I guess I can keep going, but
I don't want to
yeah,
push it past the 2 hour mark, just for the because I'm also recording this for people as well, so they can listen to it later as well, and
sure.
so you guys can also have this as a tool for you. Um, but yeah, So I know Byron had another question. Now this is a question for Saul, and you don't have to answer this one because this is a very it's kind of more of an opinionated question. So if you don't want to answer, just tell me. That's cool. He asked, from a developer inside Unity, what were your thoughts on their decision for a runtime fee policy? Were you for or against it, and why?
I'll answer it as someone who is a developer that uses Unity, because
That's a better question. Yeah.
like I personally thought that it was a bit misguided. Many people thought that from within and outside of the company. Um, I think you can't. I think what happened to the CEO, for example, we got booted, is not. It's not his. I don't think it was necessarily his fault. I think what happens is when you make a company public, you start having the stockholders have such a strong say over the decisions of the company. And what the stockholders are interested in is that they want to make money as quickly as possible. They want to recoup, right? And Unity has a really good culture internally. I'll tell you that much. Like, regardless of what you see outside, Unity's culture internally is like, one is most everyone has a voice in that company. And when we did stuff like that, there was a massive outcry. A lot of people were getting pissed on the inside. A lot of people were just straight up quitting. Um, there was just like people didn't like that decision. And because they didn't like that decision, I think and we had the control to push back, it went to a much more reasonable place quicker. But I will say that what I saw, I want to kind of note on what I saw happening is everyone running to Unreal and everyone running to like
Godot.
Godot. Okay. I think that the kind of when a company becomes that large, and has to make those kind of heavy decisions, like becoming public, because they became public because they're running out of money potentially, right? Like their old fee was so cheap, and they lost out on a lot of revenue if they just went with the Unreal model, right? If they just went with 10% of your revenue after a certain point, they would have never had to become a public company. But because they did, and they made that decision because of their values, which is they don't want to compete with developers like financially. They just want to, you pay for the product, and then as you grow, you don't have to pay anything in Unity. They kind of wanted to do that, and they were trying to stick to the guns. They thought making it public would work, but then some people publicly they start pushing and prodding the company. I think if, like, for example, Godot got that big and they wanted to stick to their values, they're gonna have to make some tough decisions, and something similar would happen to them. It's a matter of size, unfortunately. And I think even at the current, like, the fee, it's still like leagues
I
cheaper
mean,
than
Godot would do
Unreal, right?
something like that, or they would never catch up. That's basically it.
Yeah, yeah, and because Godot is, for example, open source, none of this is why porting to so many platforms is an issue. Like, platforms don't want something that's freely open source. If you want to get access to Unity source, you have to sign some heavy forms in order to get in there. But because it's open source, stuff like porting the PlayStation 5, PlayStation doesn't want their porting stuff open. That's like a huge breach of their trust. So, uh, a lot of those things where it seems like Unity's being like, bad guy Unity, I think it's just what happens when stuff gets that big and they have to make strong decisions. But from what I saw, my personal thoughts about it were like, that sucks. That's a misguided position. And I thought for sure they're gonna use the CEO as a scapegoat and reverse the decision. And that's exactly what happened. Um, because it was
Interesting.
a bad call. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was a bad call. I think most everyone thought it was a bad call. It's not even a controversial opinion at this point.
Yeah.
It's just the main thing is that they as long as you basically stick to certain versions of Unity, which I think a lot of people are going to do nowadays. It's really hard for me and Tam to, like, swap at this point in our project, and I'm sure it is for so many other projects. Like VR Chat is built on Unity. Imagine if they had to port. Like, that's intense. That's what there's one thing that's really clear and that really awesome about this age is that public outcry is heard, and you know how, like, some people say you can control things with your dollar. I forget the specific um, sentiment there, but the idea is that you're kind of in charge. The community is kind of in charge, because if everyone pulls out, Unity's gonna fucking freak out, um, because that's where their money comes from. And that's one thing that a lot of people, I think, forget, is that even with your, like, with your governmental bodies. It's the same thing. Like they're nothing without you. So the fact that you can speak out and you can influence those companies' market value, because we dropped their stocks by so much by everyone freaking out. That even though shareholders that push for this decision, they're like, okay, reverse it. We can't do this. Like we're gonna die. Like,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
power to the community is a very important message there, especially.
for sure. Yeah, in all parts of life, like super important to recognize that even though you're not just subject to them, like they're you're the one who actually makes them value, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one more question. It looks like, unless anyone has any other questions, from Loft again. So we can keep this unnamed. So he's asking, what do you see in development industries slash indie game work groups all too often that you don't like? And you can keep this as like unnamed as you like, as anonymous as you like, especially. And if you don't want to answer it, that's okay.
This is super broad, I think.
It's a very broad question. So like,
Like what kind of habits do I see in people who do
yeah,
game development that I think are not great habits? I mean, this goes for everything in terms of the art. Is that uh um I think this comes down to, okay, so one thing that I think we recently had something like this where we were just trying to like get someone to work with us, right? And that person I feel like was a bit too hasty to get to the goal of like, getting their payout. Um and honestly, I don't think that any employer wants to see that. If an employer asks you why you're at the company, they're trying to see like, you're here for other things that are other than just money. And I think if you were an employer, wouldn't you also want that? Right? So as soon as you start feeling like if you feel like you're just joining something because you want the cash, I think for bigger corporations it's a little bit easier to get by like that, but I think for indies it's like it hurts you and it hurts the company. Um, so that's a bit of a, it's one of those things where my senses are highly tuned to try to pick up on if someone actually is hype about the idea or the project. And when you have someone like that, they're not talking necessarily about money, especially when we're in the point where we're just like discussing the game. We're just saying like, oh, this is cool, whatever, and just like having a bit of fun. Don't rush to get to that point. But obviously, if you start getting to the point where they're asking you, to start doing some work or whatever, I think one, the employer will, if they're a good one, they're going to offer to pay you anyway and to start going. But allow it to be more natural. Like imagine you're meeting this random person at a bar and you're just chatting and you're getting into their space and you're getting excited about what they're talking about, right? Just being like a friendly person to another person. That is what they're going to notice most. They're going to notice that you're a genuine person, that you genuinely are interested, and then they're going to be thinking about you, even if they don't say anything at that, where you guys meet. They're going to be thinking about you when they're like, oh, fuck, we need someone like that because it's so valuable having someone like that on the team. Someone that's like super, even if they don't have like a whole lot of skills, they're a perfect intern, and you could provide that experience to them because it's really valuable to them. Um,
Yeah, they say this
yeah,
a lot on LinkedIn. Actually, is just like a lot of employers rely on like the vibe check, and especially when you're an indie, you gotta rely on the vibe check. Like skills are one thing, and usually they don't even get to the interview unless they have skills or a solid portfolio. But once you're there, it's totally a cultural fit and a vibe check to see if you're a normal human being and if you fit with the type of people that you're gonna work with.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's great advice there. I think yeah, a normal human being, yeah. Um so yes, I think that's all the questions from today. Thank you guys so much again for coming by, Harm and Sol,
yeah, no
for
worries.
coming by and especially taking your time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to everyone. I think it's really important for people to understand what goes on in both an indie and a corporate development entity, and just in general. If you guys don't mind, do you mind if I just post your LinkedIn's in the chat as well for people to see and see what you've done?
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah,
Okay.
will do.
sure.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
Thanks for having us.
yeah, that was fun. we definitely like. I think we came here because we were you, right? And we just wanted to give you the best advice to go forward, so you don't feel too lost going on. So I'm just really happy to give you that insight, so that you don't have to struggle as much as me and Tam did. And I think as someone who was working on games constantly during this program and just wanting to get like make something that somebody else is interested, because my goal and continues to be my goal is like I just want to make someone have a great experience, like just let them get into something and just really be moved by it and just like love something that I've created. That's really what I've all kind of been driving me. And I think my shyness and like my self like hate or deprecation or something stopped me from having that experience much earlier. Um so just show your shit to other people. They're gonna like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I hope we inspired you guys, honestly, or scared you, or maybe a little both.
A little bit
A
of
little
both,
bit
to
of
be
both.
honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So in the Talk Night Q&A chat, I've posted both their LinkedIn's and their Steam page for their game. So if you guys like to check that out, wishlist that, please. It looks really cool. I've gone through the description and seen a lot of the photos. It looks so cool. And I'm really excited to try it when it does come out.
Yeah, and I'll post because I just recently removed the
The
what's it
video.
called? The video from there.
Yeah.
Just because it's we're doing I wanted to give the right impression to the people that I'm sending at the moment, but you can look at basically the video what's going on here in
Sure,
that.
yeah.
So,
And whenever that
yeah,
game
and
does end up coming out, just like send me a quick DM. I will post everything about it if you'd like, because I think a lot of people, especially playing an indie developer game, it's really, really important, like to see what your fellow indie developers are doing or your developers in general. And yeah, just like learning that it gives you a lot of inspiration, right? So
yeah, and like yeah, definitely keep in mind that this was like even though this was a month, this is 10 years in the making.
it's
That's
insane,
10
yeah.
years. That took 10 years of like mental work to get anywhere near something like this, but and you don't need to get there immediately. I think I've seen shit that's like way simpler and it constantly bothers me to this day that I see stuff that's way simpler like fucking Vampire Survivor. It's like holy shit. Like I had those skills to make that game. I don't even know what like fucking yeah, when I started, like 2 years into my career, I could have made something like that. But even if you look at him, his background is like, another 6 years prior to that working in like gambling and like trying his own shit. Um, it's it's in the era where and even Notch, it's like it sounds like his story is shown like he just made like a single symbol indie game. He was working in industry for like 10 years. He worked on like Worm Online. He made a
Yeah.
million different fucking demos. He's not it takes a while to get there, but I think even with like Notch or anyone's like you have shit you're proud of along the way. And as long as you follow the fun, you're probably gonna find you're probably gonna move a lot of people if you just show your games frequently. Make little things, show them frequently. Connect with your audience as quick as possible. And also, I think one thing that the person we hired, Chloe, she tells us because she has a great audience. She has like 15K people like following her. Um, she found a niche and I was part of that niche. So try to find your niche, whatever it may be. It could be, exploding elves, as that's your thing. You just love that shit. I don't know why that came to mind, but that could be your
Well,
thing.
sure.
Just follow that thing. It's the Christmas season soon. Some people hate Christmas. That's what they want to see. Um, there you go. That's my 2 cents. I think we're good now. I'm gonna, I'll dip out. Have fun and good luck to everybody.
Yes, thank you
I
so
think
much.
you're gonna do great. Yeah,
Thank you
no
guys.
worries.
And
Yeah.
hope you guys have a great day and good luck in your game.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
All
Thanks.
right.
Bye
Peace
bye.
out, y'all.
Bye.